Namaste and welcome everyone to the third part of our 5-part Breathing into Wellness mini course. I hope the first 2 sessions have been of use to you, have revealed some benefit for you already. We've spoken a little bit about how the breath is intimately linked with the nervous system, and that how by changing our breath in return we have the opportunity to down-regulate nervous system activation. But we've also discussed a very important foundation, which is that our practice is not ever merely about technique, not necessarily just about what you do with the breath, but how you do it, which means the attitude with which we approach it. And the key attributes here that we've been discussing over the last 2 sessions are leisureliness, that certain patience, and also a tenderness that translates into a willingness to be gentle, caring, compassionate with the breath. These 2 attitudes help us create a virtuous cycle that softens the body, softens the breath, makes space for the body to breathe a little easier, which in return deepens this leisurely attitude within us. These attitudes will be incredibly important when we start a discussion around this session's practice. A deeper, slower, full yogic breath. But before we even go there, it's important to talk about another component here that is perhaps so obvious that it's often taken for granted. The fact that these practices have to be practiced. To listen to the theory may bring about a certain resonance within us, a joy even, but it's not the same as actually down-regulating our nervous systems. It's in the same fashion when you watch someone else eat. If you were to watch me eat, it may be fulfilling, it may look interesting, but it will not nurture you and nourish you in the same way if you were to be eating of your own. So too with these practices, it's about you doing them. So please, especially once you've gone through the course once, to have heard all the theory, you've appeased the intellectual mind. Use the videos repeatedly every day, once or twice even, just from the practice audio component, roughly about halfway down the video, to be guided through a regular, consistent home practice. And it is through that practice that enables us to experience these different concepts that have been spoken about, such as that virtuous cycle that the shift in attitude creates within body and breath. When embarking upon the practice of full yogic breathing, this attitude cannot be stressed enough. Because when we start to deepen the breath, how do we often do this? Do we tend to take our time, or do we tend to bully the breath and force it into a state in which we want it to be? And if that's what we're doing, if we're being forceful, what kind of a relationship does it feel like we have with our bodies and breath? This forceful attitude often comes with a threatening relationship, and upon the experience of threat, we drop back into the vicious cycle. Because it is threat that triggers our fight or flight response to begin with. So the opposite must be our capacity to develop a sense of safety, in which the body and the breath feel safe to explore this deeper, slower breath in its own way, in its own time. And how are we to create this safety other than through loving kindness? A tender approach to the breath, a willingness to actually help relax it first, so that the breath itself becomes soft and malleable, and then to invite it into a slower and deeper rhythm without actually ever pushing it. And that's why those words are so important, encouragement and invitation. Because we don't invite someone over, for example, and expect that they should do exactly as we say. They may be busy. They may have other requirements, other things to do. And we don't take that personally. It's just where they're at. So too with the breath. When in a loving relationship, we invite the body to breathe a little deeper and slower for its own well-being. Not for an agenda that we harbor, that we want to fulfill, an ambition we want to achieve. Therefore, we are patient. If the body does not lean into the invitation, we understand that that's where it's at. And it often, in fact, simply means that there's still an amount of tension and restriction in the body. It means the exact opposite of our initial inclination, which is to do more, to work harder, to push it further. It means we need to do less, to tone down, drop back, to relax into abdominal breath, or better phrased as a tension-free inherent breath. And when we feel that softness, that sweetness in the breath, effortlessness of breath, that's precisely the moment we then invite and encourage the body again to breathe that little bit deeper, that little bit slower. And as we do, you may find that the breath still starts, as it's been naturally, with the movement at the abdomen. Upon first encouragement, the breath may increase and slow so little as to only still remain in its movement at the belly. Belly feels to be expanding a little larger, gradually contracting. But when we start to experience the body finding softness in that new range, breathing deeper and slower but free of resistance and tension, when we find that sweetness emerging, that's the body then in return inviting us to encourage it a little bit deeper and slower again. Now, it may move with invitation, it may not. But the whole thing about being patient and gentle is that we learn to wait and to allow the body and breath to move and develop in its own pace, in its own time. So don't be surprised that when we start full yogic breathing, you may never, in fact, get there, so to speak. But the practice becomes successful the moment you're willing to be okay with that. To not try and bully the breath into some rhythm or shape that you predetermined for it, but to learn to change this relationship, to honor and nurture and cherish the well-being of the breath. And you may be very surprised to find that that's when it's the most receptive to encouragement and invitation, and then you may be able to encourage and coax it into a deeper breath in which the movement now rises from abdomen to chest, feeling the ribs lift and open. And slowly in time, you may be able to coax the body to breathe to its full capacity, to then experience even the collarbones broadening, the shoulders lifting, to fill the lungs through all of its different lobes and segments. This happens sequentially and naturally. Some degree of awareness is then required for the exhalation, though, to sequentially relax back down from the shoulders, the collarbones, to the chest. The belly may also release at the same time, but has a much slower pace around it so that you can still feel the belly feeling smaller and smaller to the end of the breath after the chest has relaxed. And in this way, you develop a wave-like motion to the breath. And remember, this is not something you're forcing to happen, but you're doing less of to allow the body to unfold this in its own manner. That as you breathe in, the movement feels like it rolls. It opens up from the abdomen and rolls upwards towards the collarbones and the shoulders. And that as you exhale, it starts to wave back down, smooth and gradually, from the collarbones down to the belly. The thing about full yogic breath is that there is no one right shape, so to speak. So while there is a clear outcome, a technique, that yes, as you breathe in, the breath drops to belly, rolls up, rises in its movement to shoulders, and recedes in reverse. But your own full yogic breath may only be in half that volume to begin with. That may be as far as the body wants to go. Leave it at that. Remember, the more willing you are to work with the experience of the body, the quicker you will be at untangling any of its restrictions. The more successful the practice becomes as a pathway toward downregulating nervous system. Because there's no point being able to breathe deep and slow, only to feel more agitated, more threatened by your own mind. So please bear this in mind when we move into the practice of full yogic breathing. But the other practice point to note is that there are two variables at play here. One, the duration of the breath. Two, the depth, meaning the volume of air taken. By taking a deeper breath doesn't necessarily mean that the breath takes a longer duration. You can take a deeper breath very quickly, especially when you're breathing in through the mouth, for example. So be very mindful that with full yogic breath, it's not just about the depth. It's about taking your time to get there. So much so that with the full breath, you might find that in time, with practice, with the right attitude to unlock the body, that full yogic breathing becomes a practice that happens with a cadence of 2 or 3 breaths a minute even. It's possible. But remember, it's not about reaching some goal. The reason why I mention this is just so you understand that it's not merely taking that fuller breath, but how we take time to build into it. If you're new to the practice of full yogic breathing, using your hands for feedback is really, really useful. Placing one hand at the navel, the other hand on the chest just below the collarbones to experience that wave-like motion of breath rolling upwards through the body on the breath in, waving downwards back to the belly on the breath out. It is also worth mentioning now at this stage where the practice builds in complexity that if you have any questions, please feel free to leave a comment or find me on Facebook, Home of Equanimity, and send me a message so that I can actually help you work through any obstacles you're experiencing in the practice. Otherwise, let's prepare for the practice of full yogic breath. Sitting or lying very comfortably, eyes and lips gently closed. With the eyes closed, take your time to feel into your posture and make adjustments to be as absolutely comfortable as possible, taking nothing for granted. What that means is not to assume that the body is already in comfort, but to continue to wriggle and move until you feel through contrast what feels best for the feet, the legs, what offers the most support, enables you to relax. Slowly scan from the feet up, and quite importantly, take time to ascertain the comfort around the lower back, playing with the tilt of the pelvis until you feel an angle that offers you comfort, ease, relax into it. Allow the rest of the spine then too to soften into position. If seated, find a way to build into this softness while maintaining neutral alignment, which means avoid hunching forwards or overly lifting the chest and arching. Remember that the most important foundation we want to set is tension-free, easeful state of being. And once you've checked through the arms, the hands, neck and head as well, and you're fully satisfied that this is as best as you can be positioned in this moment, then allow the body to be still, to be supported by chair, by floor, and to come to a realization that you have now set this time aside. There is nothing else to do. There is nowhere else to be. Give yourself full permission to be here in this moment, doing nothing more, but to experience the flow of releasing breaths through the body. Whole body supported, resting. Breathing in a little fuller, as if you had all the time in the world, as if you were going for a leisurely Sunday stroll. Before mouth open, freely switching off, letting it out, letting go. Being patient with this breath so you're not rushing the breath one after the other. You may even like to imagine that you've just come home from a long day out in the sun, working hard on your feet, and you finally arrived home to a cool space in front of your favorite chair. And as you next exhale, see yourself sink into that chair. Exhaling with a gentle sigh, the sigh signaling the end of all your effort. The breath providing the experience of absolute release. Remember your experience from the earlier practices. Take your time with these releasing breaths. Stay attentive so you feel how each exhalation gives you that space to breathe in a little slower, a little deeper. And in turn then, the space to withdraw the mind to patiently wait on exhalation. To feel the breath softly drain all that tension away. And to have full permission to do nothing there until the body signals its desire to take the next breath, neither rushing nor delaying it. Two more breaths in this way. At the end of this exhalation, allow the body to breathe freely and the mind to move toward the experience at the belly. Scanning through all the different muscles all around, noticing if there's any tension or tightness there. If so, encourage it to relax. Help the muscles appreciate that right now, there is no reason to tense. And then continue to do this for the chest, scanning between the ribs, not just the larger pectoral muscles, and then continuing to scan from the collarbones through the neck, letting all the different muscles know that it's now okay to switch off, it's safe to rest. Then noticing where the movement of breath naturally falls, once you've brought the body into a state of ease. You're very welcome to use your hands here for feedback. Looking to feel the movement of breath predominantly around the soft belly. Remember, if you find that this is not happening for you, it just means that the body is still locked in a mode of doing more, being busy, being active. We can't force it into relaxing, but we can look to find where this activity is, around abdomen maybe, chest, collarbones and neck. And once again, meet it with kindness and tenderness, gently letting it know that it's okay to rest now. It really is. If you find that the breath never drops purely to movement at belly, stay at this stage of the practice. Appreciate that the subtler aspect of the practice now is in our capacity to be patient, to choose not to rush this process, to be okay that this is where the breath is. But if you find that the movement of breath starts to drop down to the belly predominantly, and that as you watch it, it starts to feel softer, sweeter even, that's the moment we can start encouraging the body to breathe that little bit deeper, that little bit slower. Be very clear that the words are encouragement and invitation. You're never meant to force this. And if the body does not respond to your encouragement, leave it. It just means that there is still some level of restriction, something to do less about. Examine not just physicality and muscle activation, but also mind and mentality. Is the mind still forceful, hasty? Falling back into that leisureliness, you may find room again to encourage the breath a little deeper, a little slower. Deeper and slower, such that the breath takes a longer duration and in its movement fills belly and perhaps now just starts to lift up toward the ribs. Again, this may be as far as you go. But the more patient you are here, the quicker the body is to respond, to release within this new range, this new rhythm, a sense of ease and lightness, that softness and sweetness. And when it does, you know that's an opportunity to encourage and invite the breath again. Bit by bit, in this way, in your own time, allowing the movement of breath to start to wave from the belly, smoothly rolling up, at some point perhaps reaching even collarbones and shoulders. And there, as you exhale, relaxing from the top down, to feel as if it were a smooth receding of the wave back down to the belly. Be very careful that you're neither pushing for the breath to be deeper or forcing the breath to breathe out further. Even though full yogic breathing is very clearly a far more engaged format of breathing, it should be done with the same mentality. And this is precisely what makes the practice so effective. This change in relationship, away from us becoming the authoritarian, the tyrant over the breath, toward us becoming a loved one, somebody who acts in tenderness for the body and the breath's well-being. Take time to explore this, feeling each and every breath, observing the attitude and the way in which you breathe. Know that at no point should you be experiencing any strain. The sensation of strain is a symptom of an authoritative relationship, and in itself is a form of threat, agitating us toward fight or flight. It may seem counterproductive at first that we need to do less, not try as hard to better ourselves at something. But this is why that attitude of patience is so important. Take time. And you may find the more willing you are toward patience, the quicker the breath is to build. 2 more breaths in this way. Releasing the practice at the end of this exhalation. Pause for a moment. Notice how you feel. And use this moment to also reflect upon how you feel in tandem with the attitude, your approach to the practice earlier. And from this period of reflection, appreciate how you can approach the breath differently on your next practice to deepen this tender and loving relationship, to strengthen this rest and relaxation circuit activation. Know this before reconnecting with the space you're in. Take your time introducing movements now. Slowly allowing these movements to help you awaken, opening the eyes whenever you feel to. Know that the practice is now complete. Without having established strong roots, this practice of full yogic breathing can often be one that agitates more than soothes. But that's only because the breath is capable of amplifying what we feed it. And if we're feeding it strain, threat, forcefulness, then that's exactly what breeds within us. But when we slow the breath down through ease, lightness, tenderness, that too becomes what is amplified within us. Full yogic breathing then becomes a powerful accelerant toward this rest and relaxation state, one in which where our immune systems are at their strongest, our minds are at their clearest, our hearts can be at their fullest. It is with this wish that I present the practice and the course to you. I hope it serves you well. Namaste. All the best, everyone. Take care.